Her name is Tori Kelly. And the song is called High Water. It's 10 minutes after 7 o'clock. Welcome to Life FM on your Worship Wednesday.
Sorry, we were all a little bit caught off guard as we were talking about beauty routines between Sella, Frank Rich, and I.
Oh, no, I was fine. I was concentrating on the game, mate.
I'm glad you were.
You two were having a
I was talking SPF levels and
Discussing moisturising as blokes and beard oil.
beard oil, yeah.
I like the
guys get-
smell of my beard oil. It's good.
It's a good, okay.
And
Yeah.
my moisturiser is good.
How long has that been happening before we get onto this?
Moisturising and beard oiling?
Yeah.
Just since I got back from Germany. A friend had given me a gift bag that had male moisturiser, beard oil, and a few other good men products. And I've never moisturised as a bloke. I'm like, blokes don't moisturise. But I've started moisturising morning and evening, and it's been quite the revelation. It's quite relaxing.
As you start
My
to
skin
dry
is-
out as you get older, you're like, maybe I do need to moisturize.
Yeah, my skin is more supple and soft. I like touching my own cheeks now.
You wait till all the messages come in now, mate, about what you just said.
I love how you said I got a male moisturizer.
Yeah,
Because
moisturiser
they're
for
very
men.
different kind of moisturizer.
It is very
got
different.
all
It's got
kinds of
man product
yeah,
in it.
different ingredients. It's very different.
Let's pivot just a little bit, eh?
All right.
Okay, let's talk about this thing for a
Do you
second.
know I actually, just before we do, I actually steal my wife's moisturizer out of her little tub. But
Oh,
All
does
the
she
guys
know
do
that?
nah, because it's like a certain type of. I make sure I can hear her upstairs, and then I'll dip a finger in and put.
But
some.
look, just to make it a bit more spiritual, Jesus gave us this skin. You should look after it. If it starts flaking, do something about it. Get yourself a moisturizer.
Amen to that. Yeah, I mean, and hey, it's all well and good. You're married, use your wife or your husband.
Yeah. Look, we're sharing. It's all fine.
Taking thoughts captive.
All right.
That's topic one this morning. There's been a lot of talk actually internally around what that actually means and what that looks like. So, from you,
Yes.
where do you start with that?
It's a good question. And I think you start by looking at where it appears. And Paul, it's most overt in something that Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. And it's not clear whether he's talking about his arguments or debates with people who think differently, or if he's talking about our own thoughts. But I'll just quickly read it out. I'm going to read it from the King James Version, just because it sounds wonderfully poetic. So starting at verse 2. Let's start at verse 2. But I beseech you that I may not be bold when I am present with that confidence, wherewith I think to be bold against some, which think of us as if we walked according to the flesh. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. I was doing some reading on this, and I'm going to take it from the angle of our own mind, because I think you can relate it back to Paul talking in Romans 12 about the renewing of our mind. I was on the train coming up yesterday, and I was reading some Eastern Orthodox theology, and it dove into this topic, which was great. Let's approach it from a psychological perspective. One of the amazing things about being human is we think. We observe the world and we think. But one of the really amazing things about being human is that you can observe yourself thinking. So if you stop for a moment and you pause, and you can start listening to your own brain. So the question is, who's doing the observing? When you're thinking and you're thinking about thinking, who's doing the observing of your thoughts? One of the things that I think we neglect in our life is the power that we have to not control our thoughts, but to observe our thinking. If we're able to observe our thinking, then our thinking isn't us, which means that some of the thoughts you have are not core to who you are. They're not actually you, but they can be influenced by all the stuff we put into our mind. So this idea from Paul about taking your thoughts captive for Christ, we have the ability to look at what we're thinking and go, does this reflect Jesus? Does this model Jesus? Does this honor Jesus? And if the answer is no, because we can observe our thinking and we can shift our thinking, we have the ability to grab thoughts, to let thoughts move on, and to shift and to change our thoughts depending on what we put into our mind and what we choose to think about. So rather than just letting our minds go off and go on whatever trail they are, we have the ability to shift and to change what's going on in our head. And I think that's what Paul's talking about here.
We do have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
But when people struggle with anxiety and stress, they struggle to identify that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when the negative takes over the mind, right? So how do you counteract that?
There's a couple of approaches to that. If you're dealing with chronic anxiety, and you're dealing with chronic depression, let's just put it on the table. There may be something chemical going on. So I would encourage you to have a chat with some professionals, because some medication may help in that instance. But if it's not chronic, like for instance, our experience in Germany, I'm going to keep using this so often, but our experience in Germany put me in a fight or flight mode constantly. When we came back and I would try and sit in silence and in prayer, my mind, I'd find, would just go racing in a million and one places. But I could see it happening. And so in order to counter that over time, I've just started rebuilding my prayer life and my rhythms, thinking about what it is that I'm putting into my brain, looking to sleep properly. And so I've been able to slowly, over the last month or so, see my brain shift in how it operates. So I'm praying multiple times a day again. I have the capacity for that now, which involves the Psalms. So the input is different. I think sometimes when we're in that frantic space, we want the magic pill shift. That's not going to happen. But over time, I think we can shift and change what's going on in our head. And if you see, say, a temptation come up, classic example for me is my pantry at nighttime. I want to go in and I want to grab the chips. I want to have a sandwich. I can see that thought happening. And too often I give into it, but I can see it happening. So then if I can see it happening, I have the ability to let that thought move on or to counter it with something else. Now, if I get into bed early, I don't have that temptation. So now I just get into bed earlier. But you can short-circuit it. I think our prayer life is critical to that. What we watch, what we read is all critical to that.
We're pretty complex beings, right? And sometimes it would be easier to just be a cat or a dog who has no self-review. They've got no remorse, no regrets about how they behaved or felt or what they did. They just are, and that's fine as they are, right? But we're much more complex than that. And I think it's a tough one, right? Because that verse does get thrown around a lot with people dealing with a lot going on in their head or a really heightened situation or feeling or emotion that comes up, whether it be nerves or whatever it is. And someone's like, well, just like it says in 2 Corinthians, take that thought captive.
Yeah,
make it obedient. And
it's so trite.
It's like saying, when somebody's really upset, just saying, calm down. And they're like, oh, thanks. I didn't even think of that. I'll just stop. So it's like, I like what you said about it's like that practice.
It's muscle building.
Yeah, of continually pushing into that space and of reviewing and learning your own thought patterns and where they go and being able to maybe front foot that a little bit.
Yeah, and again, let's just say it's not easy. If I had just given into the franticness of my head at the beginning and hardly made any process right at the beginning, I would have just given up and it would have been terrible. But I know that this takes time. I know that it takes time based on input, based on who I'm talking to. So understand that if your mind's frantic and you are wanting to take your thoughts captive for Christ and turn them in the direction of Jesus, it takes time. We're building a muscle.
I'm glad you acknowledged that, Frank, because it's not an easy thing. There's no, like you alluded to earlier, there's not a magic pill as well that you can take and then everything gets fixed. I guess the word that comes to mind for me is deliberate. You need to be deliberate in your plans.
Yeah, and can I just say, this is why we worship regularly together.
Yeah.
It's why we encourage the regular reading of Scripture. It's why we encourage and seek to build prayer lives, because all of that is transforming our mind. It's capturing our imagination and pointing it in the direction of Jesus where we want it to be.
Is it why we gossip as well?
We'll talk about that next.
Yeah, we will. Cellar and Beyond this morning. Reverend Frank Ritchie is in studio with us. We're going to talk about a topic that usually has negative connotations associated with it. But as a team, the Morning Wake Up crew, that is, we were talking outside and our producer Tabs brought this up and she said, well, with Gen Z, that's not the case actually. So we're talking about gossip, Tabs.
Yeah, this actually started from a conversation that I was having with a friend who, for context, isn't Christian. And I made an off-the-cuff comment about how I thought gossip wasn't necessarily a great thing for a specific organisation that we were both aware of. And I got pushback from this friend. And this friend said, oh, I actually think gossip actually is a good thing sometimes. I think it helps deal with tyranny, and I think it helps bond with friends and co-workers. I think it's generally a good thing. And I was quite surprised because I thought that gossip was generally considered by most people a bad thing. It was just something people struggled with and couldn't help but participate in. But I've actually noticed that conversations online, especially in Gen Z circles on the internet, people generally have started to speak about gossip in a more positive light. And yeah, I thought it would be interesting to tackle it in terms of, one, what the Bible says about it, but also how we should respond around conversations around gossip if people are speaking about it in a positive light.
Is the way we interpret gossip the same way you think Gen Z interprets gossip?
Well, yeah, that's the question.
Well,
Yeah.
what is the definition? What is gossip? What is
Sure.
not gossip? What
Yeah.
is just talking with people? What is sharing information? What is,
Yeah, it's a really good question, which is why further conversation with that person would be fascinating to find out if we're actually talking about the same thing. The Bible is fascinating on this. I did a bit of a dive into it yesterday after we had a discussion about the possible topic to see what was being translated, like where we see the word gossip, particularly in the New Testament, what is being translated. So I looked at other English translations first before I went and had a look at what the Greek words were. And if you go to older translations, like the King James, for instance, the word whisper, whispers and whisperers appears there rather than gossip and gossipers, which is fascinating. So I went and had a look at the Greek word, and sure enough, the most literal translation is whisper and whisperers, and it relates it to snake charmers. So it's good to get a picture in your head then of what it's trying to conjure up, because we relate gossip to a very specific type of activity, whereas it's painting a picture as opposed to talking about a specific activity. Because if you literally go whisperers, then anybody who comes along goes, hey, Salah, well, that person is doomed. They're going,
yeah. Hey, can I borrow your stapler? Yeah. Oh, I don't take part in gossip, sorry.
So clearly it's trying to conjure up a picture. And I think the picture is, and I think you can feel it, is those conversations that go on where someone's like, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? It's that conversation that you don't really want other people to hear because we're gonna have a
There's some juice here.
There's some juice here. I've got this little secret. I've got this thing that I'm going to whisper to you about. And I think that's naturally destructive. And I think we can feel it. I think you get it in your bones when that conversation is going on. And there's a place, I'm going to bring this up, there's a place where it happens in Christian circles all the time. There's a group sitting together and they go, has anybody got anything they want to pray about? And then some juicy stuff starts coming up about people. I would say we need if there's something in you that goes, actually, I don't want to hear that, that's not good. I think there's a possibility of raising that, because I think there's a lot of gossip that goes on in those
in the name of looking after people, sort of
care and looking after people. But
it's all good to share any things that might be happening as long as we pray at the end of it.
Yeah. So I think some questions to ask, even if you don't have that feeling, is this conversation edifying? Does this conversation take us somewhere that reflects Jesus if we're talking about other people? Are we moving towards something that promotes life, that promotes human flourishing? If it's heading in the opposite direction of that, it's the whispering. It's the whispers that are going on. And as Christians, I think we want to be participating always in conversations, except when we're being frivolous and having a bit of a laugh, but not at the expense of other people, that are moving us towards life and to flourishing. If we're discussing elements of other people's lives that aren't leading there somehow, then I think we need to question the nature of the conversation.
Just to wrap this up, where does grace come into it then? How do you gracefully sort of walk away and step away from that?
Find your opportunity to walk away and step away, or without judging the people sitting in the room either who might be trying to process something, just think about, okay, I don't feel like this is edifying. I don't feel like this is leading towards flourishing. I don't feel like this is leading towards life. And sometimes that involves questions of justice as well that are hard to grapple with. So then how can I turn this conversation in that direction without just slamming somebody else? How do I take this conversation somewhere healthier? I hope that helps, Ted.
No, yeah. No, it's a great topic, actually. Two great topics that we unpacked this morning. And again, thank you for your time, Rev. We look forward to catching up with you next Wednesday.
Thank you.